Hey, everybody, we're back again for another episode at View from the Top podcast, where we help family first business owners and entrepreneurs get through the valleys and up the mountain to their very own view from the top. We're glad you're back listening in with us today. My name is Kevin, also known as Wally, and I've got Aaron, better known as Big A, in the house. Big A,
Wally,
how's your day going
Wally,
today?
you
So
know the
far, bud?
reason that everybody calls me Big A because people like you can't pronounce my name correctly, and so you
No, I
keep
can't.
saying Aaron. Like we've been around together 10 years
It's
almost.
spelled Aaron.
You keep
It's just
doing
spelled
that
that way.
every single time. We're going to have lessons at our next one-on-one on how to pronounce it. Man, I'm doing great. The weather's good. I'm good. You know, we've had a good week. It's been good with the family. No complaints. So
It's good.
it's all good.
Speaking of weather being good,
Yeah.
I've been working on some landscaping around my house, and I went to this landscaping place yesterday, and it was so you pull in, it's just about 15 minutes from my house. Drove up there with my truck, pull in. I'm just checking it out. I want to say I'm looking for stone is what I'm looking for. And I don't want to use in the back of our house around our pool. I don't want to use wood chips back there, right? Or mulch. I want to use stone. And so I go there to check out stone. I look at them online and you can see the stone, but I really need to understand like the depth I need and square footage and all that stuff. So I've got my information. I go to this, drive into this place, and it doesn't look like much. There's literally like these huge, just row after row of it's well organized, and it's has signs on everything, which is great. But it's in like this farmer's field, and you pull in, you really don't see who you're supposed to talk to, and then you realize that literally they have a cargo container set up, and it says sales office on the outside. I'm like, awesome. So I'm thinking this is gonna be challenging, and I just started to draw some expectations based on what I saw. I get there, and guy comes out, and my brother-in-law is with me. He went over with me, and I start talking to him and kind of explain what I want. Super nice guy. His name was Logan, and he introduced himself. And I started talking about stone and what I was using and square footage and all that. And so we get through. He showed me the different stones and stuff, just being super great. Super nice guy, just down to earth. And this blew me away, man. I said, now that we've kind of figured out what I need, is this something that guys can deliver, or how he goes, yeah, we can deliver it for sure, but we have free hydraulic dump trailer that you can borrow.
Wow.
I'm like, what? I'm like for free. He goes, yeah, you can borrow it, and we'll just fill you up. And I said, is it a 2-inch hitch? He goes, actually, I think it's a little bit. I think it's like a 2 5/8, whatever that is. And I was like, oh, I said, I don't. He goes, oh, we got those too. We'll just throw the hitch on and hook you up, and you can take it and dump it. And we walked over. Before, I didn't buy any stone yet.
Do you need to borrow my Toyota to go get it? I mean, I don't know if your truck will pull that.
No, I got a truck, man. My Ram's going to be just fine.
A Toyota is a truck. That's what I said.
Well,
Do you
anyway.
need to borrow my truck to pull that?
No, I'm good with the Ram. So I go over there, and he starts showing me like how the dump trailer works.
Wow.
And I'm like, fantastic. And this is good. And I said, man, I'm going to take some pictures of the stone. I'm going to go back now that I'm here, and I'm going to go back and talk to my wife, and we'll make a decision. He goes, would you like to take some samples? I'm like, what? He says, yeah, I got like quart size buckets in there, and I'll just give you some stone, and I'll wash them off so that they look good for your wife. And he goes, I'll even label them.
Wow.
I was like, what is going on?
Hey,
like,
we live close by. I need that guy's name and number. I got some stuff.
I know, right? For sure. This is fantastic. Yeah. So anyway, I'm like such a, in that business, I had expectations because I've been to other landscaping places and they weren't that way.
Yeah, that's good.
This guy knows what's up. He did a great job. And it really inspired me to think about how I do business.
That's cool. That is.
Do I pay attention to those kind of details? And am I that willing to serve? And I thought that was great.
Hey,
man.
throw their name out there. Let's give them a plug. What's the name of the company? Do you have it with you?
Yeah, it's called the Gravel Company. They're just north of Gallatin on 109. They've got a place down in Murfreesboro as well.
Yeah.
And man, they're fantastic. They do a great job.
Go visit them. So there you go.
Yeah.
Good job, man. Well, hey, if you get there and that Ram won't move that trailer, I'll run up because that's only 15 minutes from my house. So I'll run up and pull it back for you. So
Yeah, maybe we should tie a toe strap
That
onto our trucks and see who wins.
that'll be good. That'll be a new episode, right?
Yeah,
We'll see which truck mans up, and so we'll do that. Man, I'm excited
that's
today.
funny.
We're gonna be talking about an interesting topic here that we all deal with every day, quite honestly, to some level, conflict resolution. Like, how do we resolve conflict? I tell you, I wished I had had a better education on it the other night. Me and Robin kind of got into it about something, and I probably needed some of your expertise in conflict resolution. But you know what? Even after 43 years, I know you and Sonia, you've got 30, we got 43. Uh, there's still conflict, and we've got to get good at resolving it. So, conflict for you. But anything come to mind? Any story sticks
Where do
out for
you
you?
where do I start?
Oh, you got a bunch.
I
So we need this is a
Yeah, well,
2-hour episode, just so you know.
I think
Give me an
I
example
think,
how you resolve something.
co conflict resolution, I think we're in conflict often just in our heads.
Yeah. You
As we
are.
think
I
about
know you
things,
are.
I
You're
know
in
I
your
am.
head
I
all the
think way too
time.
much, all the time. But we have to process through things, right? We have to think them through. And so it's always there. There's always maybe it's a minor conflict of a choice or a decision. And then obviously probably the most potentially damaging conflict that we don't resolve would be with those that we care about, those that we love. And that could be in our families. It could be those that, colleagues and those that are teammates that are working with us in business and at work. Maybe it's at church. Man, we deal with it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, rank
Okay.
yourself. Let's see here. We'll do a little test. We haven't
Mm,
planned on this. 1 to 10 professionally. How do you resolve
ooh,
conflict? Where would you rank yourself? 1 being least, 10 being best professionally.
I'm gonna say now I'd probably an 8 or a
What
9.
about personally? Personal.
Probably a 7,
Uh-oh,
6 or a
uh-oh,
7.
uh-oh. Hope your family don't listen to this episode.
I know. It's not that I don't. It's just that when I rank myself, like I feel like it work. I don't know what the difference is. Because relationships matter just as much to me with those I have at work. Maybe not just as much, but they matter a lot at work. It's just, like they do in my home. But I think you live with the people in your home. And I think for me, there's an elevated sense. How about you? How
Yeah,
do you
no,
rank
hold on,
yourself
I
in
ain't through
business?
I'm not through with you yet. So here's the thing, let's dive into this for a second, because 'cause I'm guilty of this. I wanna see if you are as well. Like, I don't work it as hard sometimes personally to resolve the conflict because I feel like I can
Mm.
get away with it. I'm just being gut level
Ooh.
honest. I think I can like, okay, well, if you don't want to
Mm.
do that, that's fine. We'll just move on. But see, when you're dealing with clients or your customers or peers, they're not going to take that. Yeah, they're going to go somewhere else or they're going to get new friends. And I honestly think we work as hard or harder resolving conflict in the workspace than we do at home. And that's the reason we get ourselves in real trouble. We get in the doghouse at home because, like, hey, we're married, these are my kids, and we injure the people we love the most
Mm.
because we're not as willing to address the conflict. And so, yeah,
That's a
just
good
food
word.
for thought as
I
we
think you just set me up, man. I think you just
I
set me
did,
up. All right.
I did.
Yeah, you did totally, because that's spot on, man.
So I think that
Oh,
there's probably a lot of members in the audience out there today that's listening to us that's kind of ranking themselves right now. And I bet if we're
mhm.
honest, we'll find that across the board, right? We need to work harder at home to be there for the people that love us the most, right? We entered into a covenant relationship with our spouse and we want to do the right thing. We want to hold them in high esteem. We want to do the right thing. I'm speaking to myself too. I'm not pointing a finger. I'm saying we
Yeah.
all need to be conscious of that. Do you think that it's possible as an individual to avoid conflict at all costs? Like, are there people out there that are just conflict avoidant? They just like, hey, they're passive. They're not going to deal with it. What do you think happens in that situation? Like, here's the thing. Well, I get in trouble in these interviews because I'm just gut level honest, and then people come back and they say, "Oh, Big A, I didn't know you did that." But like, I like a little tussle, right? I like to get in the weeds a little bit. It's kind of Robin's picked up on it after 43 years, and she goes, "You're just trying to pick a fight. I'm not fighting tonight. We're not doing that." And I like to get in there and mix it up a little bit. But there's other people that avoid conflict at all costs. Like they just are passive. And I think there's a danger both ways. What do you think?
Yeah, there's definitely a healthy and unhealthy on both sides, right? I mean, you could take you could take you know, getting a tussle going, you could take that too far
Mm,
and create conflict that doesn't need to be there.
yeah,
And then the other side is someone that doesn't take on conflict at all. I think those that the most people I think based on my observations tend to err on the side of not entering into conflict,
right.
not
Sure.
addressing
I agree.
conflict than creating more of it.
I agree. You
I
get these
think that's
high
probably
D
true.
personalities like mine, and you can get into almost fist fights in conversations, and then we hug each other and go to lunch afterwards. And then there's other people with different personalities that, man, you're going to scar them, you're going to injure them for a long time. It's going to be a minute. So you've got to figure out your audience. You've got to figure out your spouse, your children. Their personalities are different. God designed them differently, and we need to spend a lot of time figuring out how to talk to them in a way that they receive it. And there's a lot of
Mm,
things like the culture index is out there, the Enneagram. There's a lot of things that we can study that we can learn how to communicate better to never enter into the conflict to begin with. I know that Never Split the Difference was a great read, helping us learn to negotiate because the conflict comes through that negotiation often. And so if you want a good resource, it'll be in the show notes. Never Split the Difference is a great book that you can read to help you avoid some conflict or even deal with conflict once you're in it.
yeah. There are, you just mentioned that we enter into conflict. And I think in relationships, we just generally enter into conflict. Or marriage or business or whatever it is, that everyone has different opinions and they have different upbringings
Mm,
and different points of view and perspectives. And there's a lot of value in different perspectives. I mean, frankly, there's a lot of value in
mm,
that. But there's also conflict that comes with that. I've I'm learning both in business and at home. Being married, start with home in 30 years, being married almost 30 years again this May. It wasn't until probably the last few months that I entered intentionally, not without counsel. I got counsel from, my personal board of directors. And I approached them and said, "Hey, I have this situation in my home. Essentially, Sonia and I have become empty nesters now, and we never did a great job at establishing roles up front and in our marriage. And we struggled through that communication the whole time. And who's accountable for what and how does that work and how can then we help each other? And so it wasn't just about like you do this and you do this and we'll be happy forever. It's not it. We're still helping each other and all that. But we reached this point in our marriage where things are different season of life. And I really felt through prayer and through counsel, I needed to somehow figure this out and address this with her so that we can learn together and figure out how to serve and love each other better in that way.
that's good.
And I got different opinions from
Sure.
my those that I got counsel from.
Yeah. You didn't
And
go
at the end of
into
the
it blind,
day,
though. You didn't go into it just like the way
no.
you thought, and you got counsel. So,
Yeah, and I ended up intentionally, this is my point. Being in leadership, whether you're in business, you're at home, you're at church, in your local community organizations, there is this sense that as leaders, it's so easy to try to want to smooth everything over, make everybody happy. But there is a point in leadership
yeah,
where conflict is required.
sure.
You can't grow without it.
No, no. Wally, for me, though, to be transparent, oftentimes the conflict comes as a direct result of my selfishness, just straight up.
Mm,
It just does. I want things a certain way. I want things to look a certain way, act a certain way, behave a certain way, happen at a certain time. And oftentimes I find myself, it was funny because one of the acts of service for me, my love language is I love for Robin to acknowledge things that I've done. And it's been a conflict in our marriage. Robin likes touch, she likes quality time. And I'd do things when I was younger, and then when she didn't recognize it, I'd get all pissed off. I'd be like, she didn't even recognize I dusted or made up the bed or, whatever it was. And I was moping one day and she said, what's wrong with you? And she'd been on a trip with her girlfriends and she got home and I'd cleaned up the house. It looked like a museum, right? I mean, dusted everything, vacuumed, made everything, I don't wash clothes and I don't do good with dishes. But anyway, outside of that, I did everything. And I said, you didn't even notice it. You didn't even say anything. And she looked at me and she said, did you do that because I needed the help? Or did you do that because you wanted me to recognize you? Oh, it pissed
Mic
me off
drop.
so bad. I was so mad when she
that
said
was a
that. And I said,
that was a mic drop
I
right there.
wanted you to recognize it. And she said, if you just pay attention to meeting my needs and serving me, you'd be surprised at the acknowledgments that might happen as a result of that.
That's some great wisdom from that your wife right there.
Yeah, it taught me a lesson. But here's the other thing, some of the things that we can do better. And I know that I've had to learn this over time because, 44 years as an entrepreneur, I've always owned the business, right? And I say, like, hey, this happens, you're not doing this. And I eliminate a lot of the conflicts because I'm calling the shots. Well, at home, it's not the same way, right? I don't get to call all the shots, right? Because Robin's here, the kids are here when they were little. And I had to learn to listen actively because I didn't have to listen actively when I was running the business to everyone. I listened when I wanted to listen, but I didn't get that option at home. And so I had to learn to really listen and understand what her perspective was. And sometimes I was guilty of not doing that. And Bob Warren, I've referenced him on a lot of episodes, my mentor, he taught me, he said, Big A, if you really want to get people's attention, you really want to get their respect, you lock eyes with that person and you don't become distracted, regardless of what's going on around you. And I've practiced doing that in one on one meetings.
Mm.
It really works. And people tell me now, Big A, you're a good listener. It's because it didn't come easy and it didn't come natural, but I intentionally worked on focusing on getting the distractions away, locking eyes with the person, letting them finish, letting them tell what they've got to say, listening actively. And I'll be honest with you, I think it's one of the things that's helped my marriage, being able to listen to her actively. What's another way that we can avoid some conflicts?
I think we can be open-minded versus closed-minded, especially in conflict situations. The reason we get there is because we have our own opinions. You mentioned the word being selfish earlier on, where a lot of that derives from, and I'd agree with that. And I think, especially as leaders, that we can be open-minded and willing to at least allow the other party to not just say what they need to say, like give them space to be able to say and express their opinion and their thought and their motivation and their reason, because everybody has one. And they're not, I struggle with this. I just think everybody's wrong all the time and I'm right. I don't know if you ever feel that way or not, but,
Only when I'm talking.
but I just, yeah, just naturally, I think we do
Sure.
as human beings. We
Sure.
just feel that that's it. And so leaving that space for someone, not just to say what they need to say, but also being open minded and open hearted
Yeah.
about hearing what they're saying. I forget who said it, and I can't remember, but um, there's when someone tells you something, especially when you don't want to hear it, there's usually at least 1% truth in what they're saying, almost always. And if we look for that, and then we can address the things that we can control, I think going into those conversations and those situations, uh, not being closed
Yeah.
minded, being more open minded, willing.
Okay, so we're going to camp out here for a minute because you're going to have to walk me through this because we're dealing with a lot of challenging times in our society today.
Mm,
And I think one way that you're accurate, I think that we do need to be open minded. I don't disagree with that at all. But I do think that we should have some convictions, that we should have core values, that we should have a mission in life that we're trying to accomplish that we're not willing to compromise on, that we're not willing to have a change in direction based on whatever fundamentally it is that you're establishing that level of truth. And so, how do we get to a point for you that you're willing to be open minded and look at different possible avenues to traverse versus taking a hard position and a stand on this is my convictions, these are my values, I won't be swayed? How do you do that and allow yourself to be open minded?
So let me give you an example. First of all, I agree with you 100% that we need to have values for ourselves. We need to know what they are. We need to know what our mission is in life, right? That foundation of truth for ourselves, that truth before opinion, that's a great value to have. And we need to have those. We need to know what we stand for and why. So once we have that, the approach of being open minded is more about being considerate of the other person. And so if
Okay.
we lead with our values and we lead with our opinions and what my vision is, if I lead with that, I'm essentially imposing that on someone else. And that could be there's different seasons of life. So you could go back to like your children and that in conflict with when you have small children, I don't this is a whole nother podcast probably, but I don't believe when the kids are small, I'm talking like, under 9, 10, when they're smaller, mom and dad are the authority. And that's what I believe.
Right.
And and they may get to choose between the red and the green cup, but they're not going to be able to make bigger decisions for themselves that they're not capable of making and
Right.
handling.
Right.
Right? They're just
Right.
not. But as they get older, as soon as they get to be
Sure.
teenagers, I think I think providing them a reason why you're making the
That's
decision
good.
is really important. Um, and then as they become young adults, and then you come to a similar space where you're working with other people
Right.
at work and other people in ministry and in church and just out in the community and things like that.
Mm.
I think then it kind of levels out and it's my reason. What's my motivation for being in the situation that I find myself in when conflict arises? And I think that's the difference. When I say being open minded, it's more about I had a situation just the other day. Someone came to me and said, "Hey, my daughter's in college, and there's some things that she's maybe participating in or doing that I don't agree with. That don't line up with maybe my values. I'm not sure yet, but she's coming home for a few days over spring break, and I'm kind of nervous. Like I don't know what she's going to say, or I want to be prepared, and it was kind of at first it was like, but I don't agree with that. And I think it's like, well, if that's what he led with his daughter, like, hey, I don't agree with what you're doing. That's not
Right.
being open minded.
Right.
What I'm saying is, how can we ask good questions to understand the other person's coming from their perspective? Your job is not to change them. I don't even in conflict resolution, I don't think our job is to change our team member, right? Just to force it in. You're not going to. Everybody's human and we have our own thoughts and opinions.
Could it be just that you're trying to find that common ground? You're trying to find a place where you both can live without compromising your convictions, giving them the
That's a
opportunity,
great way of saying it.
right? And just say, I know Robin and I have really reached a level of commonality when we're proactive. When we're reactive, it always ends in conflict. But when we're proactive, like we've done a lot of work to our home and done some things outside, and we would say, hey, what are the most important things that we want to accomplish? And what are we willing to give up in order to achieve that? Because you can't do everything, right? And that's where the conflict is. Their expectations are, oh, I thought we were doing a cruise this year. And I'm like, no, we bought a whole new, hot tub and furniture for the outside. And like, you got to pick. And she goes, yeah, you're right. So we've learned over the years to really sit down and look forward. That's the reason that I even wrote, What Do I Want? Right? It's a document that really helps us understand what it is that we want. We've done the spouse survey, which is really effective in your communication abilities, learning who your spouse is and what they want. And so I think reaching that sense of common ground, finding areas of agreement, and then really build on those. And you've got to give a little bit, right? You can't have it all your way. You can't be so selfish that you're not willing to bend a little bit in your family or even in your business, even with your peers, even with your colleagues. You've got to find that common ground. And I think once you do that, you'll build a culture that is safe to have this open dialogue in.
Often in conflict, I've struggled with this for a long time, and I'm slowly getting better at this. My word for the year that I chose was rhythm. And because what I found myself doing is living in the now versus living in the coming soon.
Right.
And so I would find myself even raising my daughters. I just had a conversation with my oldest daughter a couple weeks ago, and I've already apologized to her in a more serious manner, but I just made an offhanded like, I'm really sorry. You were our first one.
You
and,
learn.
and
Right.
I didn't know a lot of
Right.
things.
You learn.
And yeah, and so I wanted it fixed and solved. I wanted that conflict resolved right now. Like we're having a conversation. This is going to be over in, when I say it's over, kind of a thing. And when this conversation's over, it's going to be done. And that's not reality. We're all on a journey. And I think that if we're idea of finding common ground, but we don't have to solve it all. Not sometimes things need to have a decision. I'm not saying that. But there are a lot of things that we think have to have a decision today that we force into that man, if they just hung out a little bit longer and we asked a few more
Right.
questions, and maybe not the question in the moment, maybe we asked the question a couple days from now when things aren't so heated or so hot, and we said it in the right tone, a better tone, out of the right heart and motivation, it'd create a whole different opportunity in that relationship, related and around that conflict that we're having.
Wally, do you ever ask yourself at the end of a conflict, argument, disagreement, fight, whatever you want to call it, do you go, what are we fighting about? What in the world is this? How did it get here over that? Like, you looked at me wrong, or it's like, are you serious? And I've got a bad habit of doing this, but I've figured out a way with Robin to kind of break the ice a little bit. When we were dating, we got into a pretty bad argument one Friday night, and I stopped to get gas, and I just slammed it in park, and I jumped out of the car, and I went in and opened the gas cap and jammed the thing in there to pump the gas. I was so mad, and I went inside to pay. Well, when I went inside to pay, there was this little like a Cupid doll that had this hair that just went everywhere, and it was on a pencil. And so I grabbed it and bought it, and went outside. I think I paid for it. I went outside, got in the car, and when I did, I turned around and I took that pencil between my hands and I did it back and forth, and its hair where we went out. And Robin lost it. She started laughing, and using humor sometimes can kind of break the ice. It can lighten the mood just a little bit. But be careful, like choose your battles in that. Don't use that when it's a real serious situation because they think you might be minimizing their concerns. And so sometimes just man up and go, you know what, I'm going to make some stupid comment or do something silly or go hug her and kiss her, not let her away from me, or go to your customer and go, man, what are we doing? Like we got years of, history, and do something silly or fun, but use humor in a good way, in a tasteful way to kind of lighten the mood sometimes.
I love that. That's a great suggestion.
Mhm.
Making it different,
Hey, what
right?
what
Not
if you
just
can't resolve it though? Like what happens? Like you're in a gridlock. And to be honest, I've been there. Like I've dug in on some things.
mm,
Robin's dug in on some things, and I could talk about it in business as well. I mean, there's been times in business where I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to suffer the consequences. I'm willing for you to walk. I'm willing for you to go away. I'm not going to compromise. And it was based mostly on principle, but it was foundationally to my core values. It was like, I'm willing to let you walk, or like, I'm willing to let you go as a customer. Like, if you don't do the work with me coaching one on one, like, if you don't do the reps, I'm not coaching you because you're not going to be successful and my reputation's on the line. And so if you don't do the work, like, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. Well, same way in our marriages. Floyd Dawson is a local counselor here, and Anthony Witt is a great guy. It's a counselor that's helped talk me through some things. And Robin and I've had to go, and we said, "Hey, we're at a situation here that we can't get resolution, and we need some unbiased opinion." And so I want to encourage you, the audience, if you're in that place in your marriage or in your business or with a business partner, man, don't suffer through that. Like, go get professional help. Get somebody that can be objective and they can look at it from the outside and maybe heighten your awareness, open your eyes, give you a solution, give you exercises. And I'll tell you, there's nothing that says I love you more than for you go to your spouse and say, our marriage is worth this. I'm willing to invest the time and the resources to get it resolved. I think it speaks highly of that individual because they're not willing to deal with the status quo. They're like, hey, I don't want to stay in this conflict. I want to get it fixed. And so, yeah, numbers of times, because I'm bullheaded, and numbers of times we've had to go. And I hope Robin don't listen to this episode, but she can be bullheaded too. You know what I'm saying? It's like if she digs in and like we need help. And so, yeah, don't be embarrassed to do that.
You had said something a while ago related to kind of being, as a business owner, and there's lots of people listening to this episode that are business owners, and maybe they've been a solo entrepreneur for a while and they're starting to build a team, or maybe they've had a team already, and they just kind of been real authoritarian in the business, and they find themselves kind of plateaued, like they can't, the business really can't go any further. You've had kind of that experience, in the recent past where, you kind of were a solopreneur. You had a team, a small team, but solopreneur, and you find yourself, hey, if I want to really fulfill the mission that God's called you to, and if you want to be able to experience the vision that you've set before you, that things have to be a little different. And going down that path for you created some conflict, even internally for yourself. How did you resolve that? What are some of the things you went through, the steps you did to help work through some of that conflict for yourself?
Yeah, I've been historically kind of a control freak. I don't say that pridefully or boastfully. I wish that weren't the case. I wish that I'd learned what I know now early in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I could have saved myself a lot of conflict. But you've got to be kind of a level 5 leader to be able to stand up and paint the vision and get the qualified people that you trust, but verify, right? And I want to put that in. We can have a level of trust, but there needs to be verification for a period of time until you get totally comfortable with that person's leadership style and what it is that they're accomplishing for your vision. But you've got to dole it out slowly. I don't think carte blanche, you can just go in and say, hey, I'm not doing this anymore, hand it to somebody and let them take it over. I think there needs to be adequate training. I think there needs to be an alignment in the vision. I think that we've got to share core values so that it's handled in a way that that you've painted from your perspective as the founder or as the owner of the business. Uh, I think nothing could be worse than if you were to just hand something off to someone and they went out and did it and you didn't verify it, you didn't have conversations. I think one thing that we do real effectively here at View from the Top is we're meeting weekly, doing one-on-one sessions with the team, with the director of operations, with the integrator, with the founder, with the administrative staff, with our finance guy. We're constantly meeting, right? We know what's going on at all times. And so I think that's important. It gives you a sense of security. It gives you assurance that things are being seen after. A lot of people tickle me that come up to me that hire me to coach them, and they're like, "This has been going on for 3 years, and I didn't have a clue." And I'm like, well, man, we've got some real problems. Like if you've had your head in the sand for 3 years and there's no systems, there's no processes, there's no checks and balances, there's no accountability, you're going to end up in huge conflict. And so I think that you really establish the organizational structure properly. You have huge accountability, you have one on one discussions, and you'll find that it's easier to resolve the conflict each week than it is to let something fester, mound up over time. Now it's hard to unravel that. And so I think just keeping your finger on the pulse as you go. And so you've been very instrumental, Wally, in helping us develop that, to give that level of accountability and responsibility. And rhythm is a good word because we're very much in rhythm, right? You're kind of the conductor, and Brooke is the conductor over her admin team. And we walk through this together, and we're constantly communicating. And so, very little conflict, quite honestly, within our organization is because everyone knows their role. It's clearly identified. There's expectations and there's huge accountability. And I think if you do those things in your business, you'll minimize your conflict as well.
We actually have this afternoon, we begin our quarterly, what we call Leadership Live. And you just mentioned there's not a lot of conflict. And some people say, well, that's not a great business if you don't have conflict. You know what I think our conflict is? And I think this is a testament to the counsel that we've received and the experience that we've had and over time is that we don't want conflict at the low levels.
Right,
We don't want conflict in execution. We want conflict at the vision
right,
level. We want to hammer out where we're headed,
right.
what we're doing, who we're serving. Like that's where we want the conflict. And I so we definitely have that.
Yeah,
And conflict is not necessarily the sense of arguing and fighting.
right,
We think that conflict in itself is just trying to cut through it to get to the kind of that common ground. What do we agree on
right,
based on
right.
values and where we feel God's leading
Yeah.
us? So
That's the
yeah,
thing. That's a great point. I hadn't looked at it in light of it being a conflict, but it is an internal conflict with really searching after the best methodology that we can have to accomplish the mission. And you're like, I can go this way, and it would be easier, a lot less conflict, but it's not going to accomplish the mission. Or I could accomplish the mission knowing that there's going to be conflict and everybody may not come along. And so you've got to constantly be weighing those out, saying, what is the vision? What is the path to get there? What is the mission that I'm on? And who's going with me? And so that's a great way to look at conflict. You're exactly right. It's healthy, it's good because we're constantly weighing. The people that are not paying attention, that never have any conflict, they're not weighing out the best pathway. And so they need to have an internal sense of conflict. But at the end of the day, for a different podcast, once you establish that, it's time to fire the gun and ride the bullet, right? We got to execute, we've got to go. And so, yeah, we'll come back another day and talk about execution.
that's good. All right. So as we kind of close out the podcast on conflict resolution and dealing with conflict, what are some takeaways, Big A? What you know, we got dads out there, we got fathers, we got business owners, we've got entrepreneurs, we got people in leadership that are listening into this. They're like, hey guys, this is great information. Yeah, I'm there. I'm stressed out. I've got conflict over here, and I've plateaued and conflict in my business, and frankly, you just may be alone
Right,
and you've got internal conflict
right,
going on.
right.
Like, what what are some practical steps,
Yeah,
some practical things
that they can
that
do.
we can leave today with?
Yeah. In a summary, I would say first and foremost, spend some time alone and really acknowledge what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Like, do some self evaluation. Really think through your perspective and what it is that you would like to add. Be willing to listen actively. Really think through, is this a selfish motivation or is this best for the organization as a whole, best for my family? And I think that's a big one. I think if you really set out to serve your family well, serve your business well, your peers, your colleagues, it's hard because by nature we're selfish. And so I think just look at it through a different lens in regards to your motivation, because I think our motivation is everything. It comes out eventually, and you may as well get it out on the front end and say, these are the things that I would like to accomplish. And then I would say some of the things to do is not be willing to plant a flag too quick. Like, there are some hills to die on. And I think through thinking through common ground, really looking for a different solution, uh, look at what this makes possible, right? It may not be the way that you thought it was going to go, but what does this situation, this conflict make possible for the future? And if you'll do that honest assessment, you'll really think through what it is that you're trying to accomplish. I think it'll be a win win for you, your family, and your business.
Hey, as we close out today's episode, what Big A just mentioned about taking some time to reflect, maybe be alone, meditate, think through what it is you want. We actually have a great resource at View from the Top called the What Do I Want Guide. It walks you through a series of questions to help you figure it out, to get started identifying what it is you might want. So just hop on over to viewfromthetop.com/resources, and you can easily right there download the What Do I Want doc, and that'll help you get going answering some of those questions for yourself.
Hey, I hope you've enjoyed it today. I don't know how enjoyable it is to talk about conflict, but what I will tell you is it's very enjoyable on the other side. Having a difficult 10-minute conversation brings a lot of clarity. So think about today how you're listening actively, what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and not being selfish in nature, but being that servant leader that you were called to be. Really look for that common ground, whether it be in the workplace or in the family, so that you can go out there and build the life that you want to live today, because we want you to have that view from the top.